Behind the glitz and laughter of Hollywood lies a side few ever see. These 13 beloved actors, adored by millions, carried private storms that fame could not calm. Tonight, we uncover their untold stories, the pain behind the spotlight, and the final chapters they wrote when the cameras stopped rolling. Number 1. Robin Williams. In August of the year 2014, the world awoke to the heartbreaking news that one of Hollywood's brightest lights had gone out. At his home in Tiburon, California, Robin Williams ended his own journey after a long struggle with depression and the devastating effects of Lewy body disease, a condition that silently altered his mind and emotions. He was 63 years old, and his sudden departure sent a wave of sorrow across the world. Millions who had laughed with him through decades of joy were left in disbelief, wondering how a man who brought so much happiness could carry so much pain within. Robin's path through Hollywood had been both dazzling and lonely. From the wild energy of Mork and Mindy to the profound tenderness of Dead Poets Society, Good Will Hunting, and Mrs. Doubtfire. His gift was unmatched. He could make an audience roar with laughter, and moments later, move them to tears. Off camera, though, his struggle was constant. Friends spoke of sleepless nights, restless thoughts, and a heart that seemed to feel everything too deeply. The disease he faced in his final months brought confusion and fear, stealing the clarity that had once fueled his brilliance. Even as the shadows grew, Robin kept performing. He threw himself into his work, refusing to let his fans see his pain. On set, he was a storm of creativity, making jokes between takes, lifting spirits, hiding his own sadness behind the joy he gave others. The laughter that once healed him became a fragile mask he wore for the world. Those who loved him later said that behind every smile, there was a quiet plea for peace. After his passing, tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. Candlelight vigils appeared in cities, and fans placed flowers beneath movie posters that had shaped their childhoods. His wife revealed that Robin had been battling an invisible illness, one that medicine was only beginning to understand. His story became a reminder that fame cannot shield the human heart from pain. Robin Williams will forever be remembered as a man who gave everything: his energy, his humor, his compassion to make the world brighter. His legacy lives in every laugh, every tear, and every soul he touched. Which of his performances meant the most to you? Share your memories in the comments below. Number 2. Marilyn Monroe. In August of the year 1962, at her home in Brentwood, Los Angeles, the world discovered that the most iconic face of Hollywood's golden era had ended her own journey. She was only 36 years old, a woman who had embodied beauty, glamour, and vulnerability in equal measure. The official report described an overdose of barbiturates, a tragic end that stunned fans and left an enduring mystery around her final hours. Millions who had watched her on screen as the ultimate symbol of confidence and charm were confronted with the reality of her hidden pain. Marilyn's rise to fame had been meteoric. From humble beginnings, she transformed herself into one of the most recognizable stars in the world. Films like Some Like It Hot, The 7-Year Itch, and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes cemented her as the very definition of Hollywood stardom. Yet behind the dazzling image was a woman struggling with mental health challenges, insomnia, and the weight of constant public scrutiny. Friends and colleagues often spoke of her sensitivity, her fragility, and the exhaustion that came from being both adored and misunderstood. In the months leading to her passing, Marilyn's life became increasingly turbulent. She was battling legal disputes, career setbacks, and intense media attention. Reports from those closest to her described a cycle of restlessness, sleepless nights, and dependence on prescription medications. The more she tried to control her life, the more it seemed to slip from her grasp. Those who saw her during this period noted her vulnerability, even as she tried to project strength to the outside world. When the news of her death broke, the shock was immediate and universal. Crowds gathered outside her home, and newspapers around the world devoted entire front pages to the tragedy. Public figures, fellow actors, and fans mourned the loss of a woman who had shaped an era of cinema and challenged ideas of femininity, power, and fame. Over time, her story became a symbol of the hidden struggles behind celebrity, a cautionary tale about the pressures of public life and the quiet battles that often remain unseen. Marilyn Monroe's legacy endures not just because of her beauty or her performances, but because of her humanity. Her life and her final chapter continue to spark conversations about compassion, vulnerability, and the unseen cost of fame. Number 3. George Reeves. In June of the year 1959, at his home in Benedict Canyon, Los Angeles, the actor who had brought Superman to life on television was discovered lifeless. He was 45 years old. Authorities reported that he had died from a gunshot wound, a devastating end that shocked fans who had seen him as the embodiment of strength and heroism. Children who had grown up watching him soar across their screens could not comprehend that their hero had fallen in such a tragic way. George's path to fame had been long and filled with determination. He appeared in films during the 1930s and 40s, often in small roles, until he became a household name with The Adventures of Superman in the early 1950s. Wearing the cape and emblem of the Man of Steel, he became a symbol of courage and moral clarity to an entire generation of viewers. Yet the public image of invincibility hid a man wrestling with personal struggles and a career that seemed to have reached a standstill. In the years leading to his death, George faced increasing frustration over typecasting. Producers and studios saw him only as Superman, and he found it nearly impossible to secure new and challenging roles. Financial difficulties mounted, and his personal life became strained, adding to the weight on his shoulders. Friends described him as a man who felt trapped by the very role that had made him famous. Even as he attended social gatherings and public events, his demeanor grew more somber, and he confided to some that he feared his best days were behind him. The news of his passing spread quickly, sparking both grief and speculation. Some refused to believe that the actor who had inspired such hope could meet an end so bleak. Newspapers of the time chronicled every detail, and fans sent letters filled with sorrow to the studio offices. Over the years, his story became one of Hollywood's enduring mysteries, a reminder of how fame can become a cage rather than a crown. George Reeves remains a figure of fascination not just for his portrayal of Superman, but for the complex and often painful reality behind the cape. His life and death continue to cast a long shadow over the golden age of television and the myths it created. Number 4. Freddie Prinze. In January of the year 1977, at a hotel in Los Angeles, the comedian and actor who had become a television sensation was found after ending his own journey. He was only 22 years old. The news stunned the entertainment industry and the millions of viewers who had embraced him as the charismatic star of the sitcom Chico and the Man. His sudden departure revealed the hidden turmoil of a young man whose meteoric rise had come with pressures few could imagine. Freddie's story was one of dazzling talent and crushing expectation. Born in New York City, he began performing stand-up comedy as a teenager, quickly drawing crowds with his sharp wit and infectious energy. By the time he was in his early 20s, he had achieved what many comedians spend a lifetime chasing: a leading role on a hit television series, sold-out performances, and appearances on the biggest stages in the country. Yet behind the jokes and the easy smile, Freddie battled severe depression and overwhelming stress. Friends recalled his sleepless nights, his self-doubt, and the isolation that success often brings. In the months leading to his death, Freddie faced mounting personal and legal difficulties. His marriage was in crisis, and the demands of his career left him little time to recover or reflect. Those close to him noticed his mood darkening even as he continued to perform, masking his pain with the same humor that had made him famous. He confided to some that the weight of fame felt unbearable and that he longed for the freedom he had before stardom. When the news broke, tributes flooded in from across the entertainment world. Comedians, actors, and fans shared memories of his warmth, his generosity, and the spark that had made him special. The tragedy of his passing became a stark reminder of how the brightest lights can burn out too soon, and how unseen struggles can shape even the most successful lives. Freddie Prinze remains an enduring figure, not only for his groundbreaking comedy, but also for the cautionary tale of a young star overwhelmed by the pressures of fame. His story continues to echo across generations as a reminder to look beyond the laughter and see the person within. Which of his performances still resonates with you today? Share your memories in the comments below. Number 5. Jean Seberg. In September of the year 1979, in a parked car on a quiet street in Paris, authorities discovered the body of the actress who had once symbolized youth and rebellion on screen. She was 40 years old. The official report described an overdose of barbiturates, and the tragedy stunned both Europe and Hollywood. The young woman who had captivated audiences with her luminous presence in Breathless and Paint Your Wagon had ended her own journey far from the glittering lights of the industry that had first embraced her. Jean's rise had been swift and spectacular. At only 17, she was chosen by Otto Preminger to star in St. Joan, a role that placed her immediately in the international spotlight. She followed it with performances that blended innocence and sophistication, becoming a muse of the French New Wave and a cross-Atlantic star. Yet with each success came new pressures. Her life became a battleground of public scrutiny, political controversy, and private despair. In the years leading up to her death, Jean endured intense surveillance and harassment, linked to her outspoken support for civil rights movements. Friends and biographers later described how the weight of these pressures eroded her sense of safety and peace. She faced repeated health crises, including bouts of depression and dependence on prescription medication. Despite occasional attempts to restart her career, she found herself increasingly isolated, moving between Europe and the United States, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy. When news of her death spread, the response was one of shock and sorrow. Critics and fellow artists remembered her as a pioneer, a performer whose modern style had reshaped screen acting. Fans placed flowers at the sites associated with her films, and newspapers revisited her turbulent life, questioning how a woman so admired could have carried such invisible pain. Over time, her story became emblematic of the dangers of fame and the vulnerability of those who seem untouchable. Jean Seberg remains a haunting presence in the history of cinema. Her image endures on posters and in film stills, a reminder of both her brilliance and her fragility. Her life and final chapter continue to provoke reflection on the costs of celebrity and the quiet struggles that may unfold behind the camera. Number 6. Carole Landis. In July of the year 1948, at her home in Brentwood, Los Angeles, the actress once hailed as the Golden Girl of Hollywood was found lifeless. She was 29 years old. The coroner's report cited an overdose of Seconal, and the news swept through the entertainment world, casting a pall over a career that had promised so much. For the public, she had been the embodiment of glamour and vitality. Yet behind that image lay years of personal struggle and heartbreak. Carole's ascent had been swift and dazzling. She arrived in Hollywood as a teenager, determined to break into the movies, and soon became a fixture in the studios of the 1940s. With striking looks and a lively presence on screen, she earned leading roles in musicals, comedies, and wartime films that lifted audiences' spirits. She toured tirelessly with the United Service Organizations during World War II, entertaining American troops overseas and earning the nickname the Blonde Bomber. Her dedication to the soldiers brought her admiration, but also exhaustion and emotional strain. In the years following the war, Carole's career began to falter. Roles grew fewer, and her personal life became increasingly turbulent. She experienced a string of troubled relationships and financial setbacks, each one adding to a sense of instability. Friends later recalled her deep sensitivity and her constant desire to be loved and respected in an industry often indifferent to the human costs of fame. Although she maintained a bright exterior at public events, those close to her sensed her despair and isolation. The morning of her death, newspapers reported a scene of quiet tragedy at her Brentwood home. The discovery sent shockwaves through Hollywood, where colleagues and fans alike had admired her generosity and spirit. The outpouring of grief revealed how deeply she had touched the people around her, even as she felt increasingly invisible within the studio system. Over the years, her story became part of the lore of Hollywood's darker side, an example of how fame and vulnerability can collide. Carole Landis remains a symbol of both the promise and the peril of stardom. Her films continue to be revisited by classic movie enthusiasts, and her name endures as a reminder of the hidden struggles faced by those who seem to have everything in the public eye. Number 7. Dana Plato. In May of the year 1999, at a motorhome in Moore, Oklahoma, the former child star who had once charmed millions on the sitcom Different Strokes was found after ending her own journey. She was 34 years old. Authorities reported a lethal combination of prescription medications, a tragic close to a life lived in the spotlight from an early age. For fans who had grown up watching her on television, the news was a painful reminder of how fame can shape and break a life before it has fully begun. Dana's career began when she was still a child, appearing in commercials and small roles before being cast as Kimberly Drummond on Different Strokes in the late 1970s. Her performance brought warmth and humor to the show, making her one of the most beloved young actresses of the era. Behind the camera, however, she struggled with the intense pressures of stardom and the lack of a normal childhood. As she grew older, she faced difficulties finding work, and her personal life became increasingly unstable. In the years leading to her death, Dana endured financial hardship, legal troubles, and ongoing battles with substance dependence. She attempted several comebacks, appearing in television movies and reality shows, but the public often saw her through the lens of her past rather than her potential. Friends described her as vulnerable and hopeful, someone who longed for stability yet often found herself in chaotic circumstances. Despite these challenges, she remained deeply attached to her fans and spoke openly about her struggles, hoping her honesty might help others facing similar issues. When the news of her passing broke, tributes poured in from former co-stars and fans who had never forgotten her role as the sweet, relatable girl next door. The story of Dana Plato became another chapter in the cautionary tale of child actors who achieve sudden fame without the support to handle its consequences. Her life highlighted how the glamour of Hollywood can obscure the needs of those most vulnerable to its demands. Dana Plato remains a poignant figure in television history. Her performances continue to evoke nostalgia, and her story serves as a reminder of the human cost behind the laughter and applause. Which of her moments on screen do you remember most clearly? Share your memories in the comments below. Number 8. Lee Thompson-Young. In August of the year 2013, at his apartment in North Hollywood, California, the actor who had once been the bright face of Disney Channel was discovered lifeless. He was 29 years old. Authorities reported a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and the news reverberated across the entertainment world. Viewers who had grown up with him on the famous Jet Jackson could not reconcile the energetic, hopeful character on screen with the tragedy of his final days. Lee's journey into acting began early. Born in South Carolina, he showed a passion for performance as a child and quickly rose through the ranks of young actors. By his teenage years, he had landed the title role in the famous Jet Jackson, a groundbreaking show that made him a role model for countless young viewers. His work later extended to films and series such as Friday Night Lights and Rizzoli and Isles, where his talent and quiet intensity won praise from critics and audiences alike. In the months leading to his death, Lee struggled with depression and personal difficulties that few outside his closest circle knew about. Friends later spoke of his gentle spirit, his intelligence, and his tendency to carry his burdens in silence. Despite his success, he reportedly felt the weight of expectation and the pressure to maintain a public image that did not always match his private reality. Those who worked with him described him as professional and kind, someone who uplifted everyone around him even as he wrestled with his own pain. The announcement of his passing stunned his colleagues and fans. Tributes flooded social media from co-stars, producers, and admirers who had seen in him not just an actor but a person of integrity and warmth. His story became another reminder that mental health challenges can affect even those who appear to have everything. Over time, his name has been invoked in discussions about support for young performers, privacy, and the need for compassion within the entertainment industry. Lee Thompson-Young remains remembered for the characters he brought to life and the authenticity he carried into every role. His brief but brilliant career left an impression that endures long after the cameras stopped rolling, a legacy of talent and grace that continues to inspire those who knew his work. Number 9. Jonathan Brandis. In November of the year 2003, at a hospital in Los Angeles, the actor who had once been a teen idol of the 1990s was pronounced dead after being found unresponsive in his apartment. He was 27 years old. The official report cited a self-inflicted hanging, a shocking and heartbreaking end for a performer whose image had symbolized youthful promise and energy. Fans who had followed his career from childhood were left stunned and grieving, struggling to understand how someone who seemed to have so much could carry such deep pain. Jonathan's path to fame began at an early age. Born in Connecticut, he started acting in commercials and television before landing significant roles that showcased his bright charisma. He gained widespread recognition with his performance in the Stephen King miniseries, It, and later became a household name as Lucas Wolinchak in the science fiction series SeaQuest DSV. With his boyish looks and natural charm, he appeared on countless magazine covers and became a favorite among teenage audiences. Behind the scenes, however, Jonathan's life grew more difficult as he transitioned from child star to adult actor. The roles that had once come easily began to fade, and he struggled to find meaningful work in an industry that often discards its young talents once they age out of certain roles. Friends later described him as thoughtful and sensitive, someone who felt the ups and downs of his career intensely. In the months leading up to his death, he reportedly battled feelings of disappointment and uncertainty about his future. When the news of his passing spread, tributes poured in from former co-stars, fans, and industry figures who had been touched by his talent. The tragedy of his death prompted renewed discussion about the pressures faced by young actors and the importance of mental health support. His story became a sobering reminder of how quickly fame can shift and how vulnerable even the most successful performers can be when the spotlight moves on. Jonathan Brandis remains remembered for the vibrancy he brought to his characters and the hope he inspired in audiences. Though his career was brief, his performances continue to resonate with viewers who grew up watching him, and his legacy endures as both a celebration of talent and a cautionary tale about the unseen struggles behind celebrity. Number 10. Spalding Gray. In March of the year 2004, at New York Harbor, the body of the acclaimed actor and monologuist was recovered after he had been missing for 2 months. He was 62 years old. Authorities concluded that he had ended his own journey by entering the water on a cold winter night, a tragic conclusion to a life defined by honesty, creativity, and a relentless examination of the self. Audiences who had followed his work for decades were stunned that a man so gifted at turning pain into art had reached such a final silence. Spalding's career was unlike that of any other performer. He became known not for traditional acting roles, but for his groundbreaking monologues that combined humor, confession, and observation. Works like Swimming to Cambodia, Monster in a Box, and It's a Slippery Slope turned his personal experiences into riveting stage pieces that inspired countless artists. He also appeared in films, bringing his distinctive presence to the screen in projects such as The Killing Fields. His talent lay in his ability to take private struggles and transform them into something that audiences could share and understand. In the years leading to his death, Spalding suffered from deep depression and lingering physical pain after a serious car accident in Ireland. Friends and family described him as increasingly fragile but still determined to perform, hoping that his art might help him heal. He continued to write and appear on stage even as his health and outlook declined. Those who knew him best spoke of his generosity and his desire to connect with people beyond the boundaries of performance. The discovery of his body brought an outpouring of tributes from the theater world and from fans who had found solace in his candid storytelling. Many saw his passing as a stark reminder of the toll that chronic pain and mental illness can take even on those who seem endlessly resilient. His work has since been preserved in archives and documentaries, ensuring that new audiences can discover his voice. Spalding Gray remains an enduring figure of artistic courage. His monologues continue to be performed and studied, and his legacy lives on as both an inspiration and a warning. Which of his works or performances has stayed with you the longest? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Number 11. Richard Jeni. In March of the year 2007, at his home in West Hollywood, California, emergency responders arrived after reports of a gunshot. He was 49 years old. The coroner later determined the wound was self-inflicted, a devastating end for one of America's most quick-witted stand-up comedians and a familiar face in films and television. Fans who had admired his sharp humor and boundless energy were shocked to learn of the private despair hidden beneath his public persona. Richard's path to fame had been built on relentless hard work and a gift for timing. Born in Brooklyn, he began performing stand-up in small clubs before breaking out with appearances on The Tonight Show and several acclaimed HBO specials. His routines blended intelligence, absurdity, and a rapid-fire delivery that made him one of the most respected comics of his generation. He also appeared in popular films like The Mask alongside Jim Carrey, and his presence on screen carried the same kinetic energy that defined his live performances. In the years leading up to his death, Richard faced mounting pressures from both his personal life and the demands of a career spent constantly on the road. Friends and colleagues later spoke of his bouts of depression, his struggles with insomnia, and the toll that performing night after night took on his health and spirit. Despite these challenges, he continued to tour, record specials, and develop new material, always determined to deliver for his audience even when he felt depleted inside. The news of his passing sent ripples through the comedy community. Tributes poured in from fellow comedians who had looked up to him as a mentor and a pioneer. Fans remembered not just his jokes, but his generosity and kindness off stage, a man who always had time to offer advice or encouragement. Over time, his story became a somber reminder of the hidden battles faced by performers whose art relies on projecting joy. Richard Jeni's legacy endures in recordings of his stand-up specials and in the influence he left on a new generation of comedians. His work continues to elicit laughter, while also evoking reflection on the human cost of a life spent trying to make others happy, a life where private pain can remain invisible until it is too late. Number 12. Peter Duell. In December of the year 1971, at his home in Hollywood, California, the actor known for his role in the television series Alias Smith and Jones was found after ending his own journey. He was 31 years old. Authorities reported a gunshot wound, and the news stunned fans who had followed his work on both television and stage. For audiences, he had been a charismatic presence, blending rugged charm with vulnerability, and his sudden death cast a shadow over one of the most popular shows of the early 1970s. Peter's path into acting began with guest appearances on series throughout the 1960s, gradually building a reputation as a versatile performer. His breakout came when he was cast as Hannibal Hayes in Alias Smith and Jones, a role that allowed him to display humor, warmth, and subtle intensity. Viewers embraced the show's playful mix of Western adventure and lighthearted banter, and Peter quickly became a favorite among critics and fans alike. Yet behind the scenes, he struggled with emotional turbulence that contrasted sharply with his on-screen image. In the months leading up to his death, Peter was facing professional stress and personal uncertainty. The demands of a hit television series left him little time for rest, and friends later recalled that he seemed exhausted and increasingly withdrawn. Although he remained dedicated to his craft, he often spoke of the pressures of maintaining both a public persona and a demanding work schedule. His sensitivity, which made him such a compelling actor, also left him vulnerable to the weight of expectation. The announcement of his death arrived as a shock to his colleagues and the show's devoted audience. Tributes poured in from fellow actors and fans, who mourned the loss of a gifted performer at the height of his career. Producers were forced to continue the series with a replacement, but many viewers felt the magic of the original partnership had been lost. Over the years, his story has been revisited as a reminder of the hidden costs of fame and the fragile balance between personal well-being and public success. Peter Duell remains a figure of fascination, both for the promise of the career he had built and for the unanswered questions about his final days. His performances continue to resonate as an example of talent touched by quiet struggle. Number 13. Peg Entwistle. In September of the year 1932, on the rugged hills beneath the Hollywoodland sign, the body of a young actress was discovered by a hiker. She was 24 years old. Authorities identified her as Peg Entwistle, a stage performer who had recently come to California seeking fame in motion pictures. The discovery of her body near the famous sign captured the attention of newspapers across the country, and her tragic death became one of Hollywood's earliest cautionary tales. Peg had been born in Wales and raised in New York, where she found early success on Broadway. She was praised for her talent, discipline, and emotional range, performing alongside respected actors of the era. Her decision to move west came with high hopes, driven by the promise of film stardom during the dawn of the talking picture age. In Los Angeles, she landed a small role in a movie titled 13 Women, a suspense drama that showed her potential for greater success. Yet the film received limited attention, and her contract with the studio was not renewed. What should have been a new beginning soon turned into a period of disappointment and loneliness. Friends later described Peg as graceful and kind, but deeply affected by rejection and the uncertainty of her future. She lived with relatives while continuing to audition, walking the very streets that symbolized her dream. The pressures of financial struggle and professional rejection weighed heavily on her spirit. When she disappeared one evening in September, her absence went unnoticed until the following morning, when her belongings were found at the base of the sign. Inside her purse, police discovered a note that spoke of despair and the feeling that she had failed to find her place. The story quickly became legend. Newspapers sensationalized her final moments, turning her into the Hollywood sign girl, a tragic emblem of broken dreams. Over the decades, her tale has inspired books, songs, and films that explore the darker side of ambition. To many, she remains a symbol of the hope and heartbreak that have always defined Hollywood. Peg Entwistle's name endures as both a mystery and a reminder of the fragile line between dreams and despair. Thank you for watching. and for remembering these stories with compassion. Stay tuned for more untold tales of Hollywood's hidden past, and see you in the next video.